about something that's we all are doing, caring from the heart.
Absolutely. And welcome to Terry, our moderator today.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So it's almost 12 o'clock. We're going to start momentarily. I just want to welcome everyone that's trickling in and joining. Welcome to our webinar, Matters of the Heart, What's in Your Heart to Care for Others. Just really quick for housekeeping, I am going to go over some Zoom things and also introduce myself. My name is Magna Taneja. I'm part of the Outreach and Education team at Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice. If you are new to our online programs, welcome. We are so glad you could join us today. We're expecting around 50 participants, and we want this to be an interactive webinar where we can really engage with our audience and discuss these topics that are affecting us as a community. So my role today is to help facilitate and handle the behind the scenes logistics of the webinar. You may see me or my colleague Alejandra pop up in the chat box to address or help with any technical issues. I want you to thank you for your patience ahead of time if we have any. I'll also come back in at the end to discuss more housekeeping and program evaluation. So to make this more interactive, we may ask you some questions from time to time. We will be using the chat feature to communicate with you throughout the webinar. So you can access it by clicking on the messaging icon in your meeting controls. When you send a message, please be sure to select all panelists and attendees for the to box. And then we can see your comment or question and share it live. We are recording this webinar, and when our moderator reads out your comments, she will not be using your full name. So on that note, our webinar today will be moderated by Terry James Taylor, Director of Community Outreach at Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice. And our guest today is Dr. Gloria Anderson. Terry has been at our organization for over a decade and has cultivated many strong relationships within the community. She has participated in events as well as organized programs and presentations across the metropolitan region, including at churches and senior centers, both before and during COVID-19. So Terry, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Magna. And I'd like to say welcome everybody. Although we're in February, we're still in the new year. So happy new year to everybody. And thanks for joining us today. And before we get started, I just wanted to share with everybody, we're going to try to do something a little bit different this year. As Magna was mentioning, as far as we want to have more participation from the audience. Over this last year or so now, going back and forth with COVID, we know people have a tendency, or we all had a tendency to get burnt out with all the different webinars and things like that. So we've decided this year with a lot of our webinars to just have a more of a community feel and everybody really engaged, not feeling like you're in a classroom setting, just open and honest dialogue. And so at this time, I'm going to introduce Dr. Gloria Anderson, and she's an assistant professor in social work at North Carolina State University. And she's deeply committed to helping underserved communities of color in healthcare decision-making matters related to advanced care planning and end-of-life care. For the past 13 years, which I'm sure is probably more by now because I feel like I've known you that long, she has worked extensively with healthcare, hospice, and social services organizations. Dr. Anderson is also the author of the African American Spiritual and Ethical End-of-Life Care Guide, and it's entitled also What Y'all Gonna Do With Me. And with it being Black History Month, I would have to say all the different things that she's done throughout the nation. In addition to writing this book, that's a touch of Black history. So at this time, we're gonna now move to the objectives of some of the conversations that we're going to have today. And one of the first things we're going to talk about, we're going to discuss different types of communities and their relevance to social connection. The second thing we're going to touch bases on is to talk about ideas and ways to show people in our communities that we care. And the last thing we will talk about is we're going to take a look at ways to encourage and maintain hope during the pandemic. And again, as I mentioned before, all of these topics or objectives that we're going to talk about, we want you all to chime in whenever you like, and definitely give us your feedback and any suggestions as well. Dr. Anderson?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. First, I just want to say, how is everybody doing? I know my family's been impacted in Texas with the power outages and the ice storms and the tornadoes in North Carolina. So I just want to say, you know, I hope everyone is safe and that those you love and care about are safe. And we'll just continue to hold together as community. Community is, you know, just to kind of talk about what community is people, all right? It's the people in our lives. And so when we think of community, I think most of us would agree that Oxford's definition of it is just pretty right on, where it talks about a community being a group of people living together in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. And that would just be fellowship together with other people as a result of our own common interest or attitudes, interests, and goals. So community is what we all have community, right? What are some of the communities that you're involved in right now? I know that a sisterhood community, I think Terry mentioned a group that she's a part of that's around sisterhood. I know there's the church community. As an academic, I'm part of the academic community. So I see Charlene said neighborhood, senior citizen, family, absolutely. Church community. Yeah.
Work community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
family and church. And I just recently joined, well, we've been a part of it for a couple of years, but also did join the Prince George's Senior Network. And that's been really good. That's a lot of community and working with seniors. I love doing that. And of course, my church community as well.
Yeah. I see climate activist community. That's
Oh.
pretty relevant right now.
It is.
With what's going on with climate change. So that's really cool. But we all have community, you know, even if you didn't put it in the chat, we know that we are part of community in some shape or form because we are people and we do gather together with other people for similar interests and concerns. Family definitely is part of that. So when we look at social connection, just so that we can have a kind of background or backdrop as we start talking about these things, researchers have agreed that social connectedness is in close relationships, is one of the most fundamental aspects of our human development in our lives. As human beings, you know, we are social beings. Actually, we need to be connected with others. We're biologically and emotionally and mentally wired for that. So we want to be loved, for example, we want to be accepted, we want to belong, and we want to be cared about. So there's one theory I want to talk about, the self-determination theory, and it espouses that we have three primary psychological needs. That is relatedness, competence, and autonomy. And relatedness is the one that is considered the most important one as it relates to promoting our social or pro-social behavior and that increased sense of connectedness to others that it can bring about. So again, both of our communities and our social connection to those communities, they play a big role in who we are and how we experience meaningfulness in our own lives in relation to other people and to even to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask though, just what are some of the things that are impacting our social connectedness and community right now? You know, we know COVID is, right?
Absolutely.
COVID definitely is. I would say another one is social distancing. Just the fact that we can't do what we normally do to connect with other people. I saw somebody said that they connect with their friends, did a drive by coffee break or something to just have coffee with someone and had their windows down in separate cars. That shows the need for how wonderful that can feel to us just to have this type of connection with others. We're social beings and we need that connection.
We really do. And I think once we come out of the COVID situation, the little things now, and we won't take for granted. I know I won't, and I'm sure everybody in the audience won't take it for granted either. When you think about just being able to, at any given time, go visit a family member, go visit a friend, go sit in the park. I mean, do so many things. Being so isolated and having to be mindful of every little thing, sometimes you don't realize just how mindful you have to be with everything. Everything is. Does anybody in the audience feel that way, or even after we've been through this for a whole year? Is there a time that you've ever forget that we have to be mindful of all the things that we're doing? No one? Okay.
Yeah.
Rachel said, not for a minute.
Yeah, I think all of us, I mean, this is they call it the new normal, but definitely it is impacting our emotional
Oh,
wellness in many cases.
there's a lot that's coming through just now, too. And it says, yes, mindfulness is being still during this time. Lindsay said, even though I shouldn't, with social distancing. And then, and this is a really good one, Amy. I'll forget my mask sometimes. And I know because there's times I've run to the car, I go, and other people do the same thing, because a lot of times, as soon as people see you turn around, somebody say, oh, you forgot your mask. And then you just start laughing. And and Elena wanted me to ask the question again. The question that I was asking of the audience was, is there ever a time? I hate it that there's times that we have to be so mindful of everything. And is there everything right now during the COVID? And is there ever a time that we forget to be mindful because it's like second nature to want to, touch somebody, hug somebody, especially our family? That was a question that I had asked, and for Elena.
So the extreme media coverage of suffering instills both fear and compassion, scarcity versus abundance.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of yeah, you're so true about that. The media sometimes doesn't help, and
Hmm.
if you're not careful, we can just become very fearful to do anything. I've talked to a few people who said that they know that they're not supposed to hug, but they do anyway because they
Hmm.
just need the touch.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that too. Sometimes I hug myself, guys. I just actually hug myself so I can feel the connection of human touch.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And so imagine, my heart always goes out to people who live alone,
yeah,
because they're the isolation in that's a community of people who live by themselves and not able to interact with others. It's different when you can go out and be able to do those kind of things, but staying in um, can be really lonesome at this time. Rachel said our dog gets so much petting, I'm sure.
and then I read an article too that if you have a pet, that's really a good source of connection.
Hmm.
That's just to touch your pet. And I don't have one, but I like I said, I just do the hug myself to feel the sense of touch. But yeah, that's been very helpful for a lot of people. Just having a pet is a blessing right now if you have one.
And Melanie, she said, I'm intentional about staying connected with church family through multiple Zoom meetings. I've done so much more praying for people because I feel so much more connected to their struggles. And I'm very much active in my church as well, for Zoom. And my sister and I, we kind of have a joke going. My mother, who's a pastor, she's really telling us all the time, "Oh, y'all are really church hopping now because you can always go to different um, churches who are holding
Yeah.
their Zoom congregational congregation the sermon at different times." I'm sorry. Yeah.
Linda said, our dog is going to be sad when we all go back to work outside. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit of objective number 2, where it said, we'll talk about some ideas and ways to show people in our communities that we care. When we think about what caring from the heart really means and defining what caring is and even what the heart is, we know that the heart is a biological, physical dimension of our body. We have a heart. We wouldn't be on this webinar if our heart wasn't beating. We understand that. But the other part is that heart of hearts, which is based on the foundational of our intentions, our behaviors, our values and motivations, those things that drive our behavior. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And that's kind of the heart of the matter, is what we're wanting to kind of talk about today. I ran across an article not long ago. It's an older article, but it was entitled, Ask Me What Is in My Heart of Hearts. And the study focused on care for, as it related to parents who were also psychiatric patients. And so it pointed out that caring acts are natural processes, that they're essential for our human survival, growth, and development. And so I wanted to also point out another article that I read recently by Hemberg and Guston, and they were reporting that the heart of caring, or caring from the heart, can also be seen as compassion. So having compassion for others. And I saw someone said, they said that they're intentional. Melanie said, I'm intentional about staying connected with church family through multiple Zoom meetings. I've done so much praying for people because I feel so much more connected to their struggles. And that is that caring act. When you feel like you're connected to them, it's empathy that you have for others. You may not be in that situation. I'm sure that you've been watching the news and seeing people who have been without power and in freezing cold weather, and people in long lines trying to get water or food. I mean, it's heartbreaking. A caring heart feels that. You may not know those people. So this article, what I want to share with you guys is that they gave 4 themes that came up out of their research that they did with these nurses in a home care environment. And those themes that show that you're caring with compassion said that it was encountering one another as human beings, that we encounter one another as human beings, not them or that, or those people over there, but as human beings. It said being in the moment, so that when we are caring, that we are actually there. We may not be there physically with someone, but being in the moment with them and really, breathing in and taking in that experience along with them. The third thing was bearing responsibility for the other. That's part of the caring from the heart, and then being in loving communion. It's interesting, though, that their overall theme of their study was acting from one's own inner ethos, heart of goodness and love. And so I thought that was really beautiful in terms of just thinking about what is caring from the heart. It's compassion, it's being responsible for others, it's caring about others in a way that's coming from that deep place within who you are, to touch somebody's life. And again, it's because we are social beings. We need, yes, I will. I'll repeat that. Because we are social beings, that connectedness and being relatedness to each other is just a powerful way for healing as well. So that the ethos was their statement, their overall theme of their study was acting from one's inner ethos, heart of goodness and love. And I don't know if I can put that in the chat or not. Maybe I can. I can type it in right quick. I'll type it in right quick. I think I can type it in right quick. Acting, no, maybe acting, acting from one's inner heart of goodness. There it is.
So,
Yeah. So that heart of hearts, that's what's in our heart to care. Terry came up with that theme. It was something I felt with, you're very welcome, Lindsay, is something that I think right now, because we are bombarded with so much still stress from the COVID and the pandemic. And even though we're seeing good things happen, we're still seeing a lot of not so good things happen as well. So I appreciate her for even thinking about just how do we show that we care for others in this time that we're living in.
yeah. And I think being in the healthcare industry, and especially at end of life care, like we are at Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice, it really means a lot, because that's at the end of life. That's a lot of times is when we've been fortunate enough that families will even allow us to partake in that, because that is a difficult time in somebody's life. So to be able to be in that setting with them, and for them to allow us to care for their loved ones, you have to have a heart to do that. And I'm sure anyone who's on right now that's working in the healthcare industry, you absolutely understand what I'm saying, whether it is at end of life or whatever you're doing that's in the healthcare industry, or just trying to love on one another intentionally and just caring for one another. I never forget years ago, this was probably over 20 years ago, I was visiting a facility, and I was a volunteer at the time. And I lived in Colorado, and I had gone to a facility to visit a patient. And although he was very ill, but he could determine, he knew, he said to me, he said, I know who is doing this just for a job. And I also recognize those who are wanting to do that, and they want to do it from their heart. They're very sincere about their job. And that really touched me, because for that person to be at the end of life and to say something like that, we always need to be mindful as we're caring for people.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, Terry. That's a good point. Um, when you think about what's in your heart to care for others, some of the challenges in healthcare right now is because people can't go in like you guys were doing before just to see about your patients. How are some of the ways that workers are being able to care for others in the setting of work that requires that social interaction? Is there maybe some of the audience might know some ways that how are you handling that, dealing with the challenges right now in healthcare, to even care for others, to give them the services that they need.
Mhm. Would anybody in the audience like to share?
As a grief counselor, connecting via Zoom, yes, phone calls, video visits.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Karen.
Mhm. Is there anyone else?
So they can see me. Yeah, Carla, that's important too. The just even the visible part of just being able to see the person means something. Even we can't be together.
And what was this? Dixie, she said the healthcare system needs to compensate Oh, she's fine.
Selflessness
Selflessness, yes.
of our
And the
bedside
care,
workers. Oh, wow.
put it all, they are the ones who deliver real care.
Mm.
And then Deborah Wells, she said high level communication often more often by phone or iPad, creative outside the window on a cell phone with great efforts to allow compassionate visits when appropriate, even with PPE. I agree, Deborah. I agree with that. Amy, she says, I make a lot of phone calls instead of visiting. I am mailing more cards. That's another thing that it does has this pandemic has done for us. It made us go back to some of the things that we used to do. Um, a lot of people like to read books online. I still love books, so I'm sure people have picked up, for those book lovers, picked up a lot of books too. Let's see. Patricia, she said it has been very difficult as face-to-face visits are not happening. It is hard to talk over the phone about end-of-life issues. I can only imagine. I am an oncology social worker. I had to rework my practice. I like to see people and connect. And I'd like to ask Patricia, what did you do to rework that? What are some of the things that you did to change since you can't do face-to-face visits?
It's been a work in progress. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can only
Yeah.
imagine. But we've had a haul. We really have.
Uh,
Miss Maud, being open to spending more time with clients and telephone interaction, just listening and affirming clients. Yes. Thank you, Miss Maud.
Yes.
Patricia, have confidence that phone is good as well.
Yeah. And then, some of the seniors I know that I've worked with too, they don't have computers. They
Mm-hmm.
only have their phones, and some of those are just real phones, not even cell phones. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one person I talked to, she has her cell phone because her son insists that she has it, but she never picks it up. She says it's for an emergency. So, just even the phone is still a great tool that we can connect, because some connection is better than no connection. I'm sure you agree with that. So
Mm-hmm.
bless you all in the work that you're doing to still have that social connectedness and relatedness to the people that need you, and then to I know it makes a difference. Some things are not conducive. Yes, that's true. The Zoom
Yes,
is
too. So
not
this,
conducive. Exactly. It's not. So the phone is the lifeline, if you will, to staying connected with our seniors in many situations.
mhm.
So that's beautiful. Yeah. Um, there was a um, there was a book that I read called Ethics of Care, and it's by Virginia Held. And I could put that in the chat if anybody wants to. Let me see if I can do this. It's called Ethics of Care, and it's by Virginia, and it's a really big book. But I we can share. Okay, they can. That's great. Okay. So this particular book, though, when I was looking at what is a caring person, like how would you define a caring person? I like what she said. She said a caring person is someone who not only has the intention to care and the disposition to care, but who will also participate in caring relations. She goes on to say that if a person lacks the capacity to do that, they can be a person who is trying to be caring, but they're not yet a caring person, because to be a caring person requires more than the right motives or disposition. It requires the ability to engage in that practice of care and exercising that ability of participating in caring relations with others. So that it's not just doing, in other words, it's not just doing something like my job, like you were mentioning, Terry, in that situation. I'm doing my job, I'm caring
Right.
for my patients. It's
Mm-hmm.
going more, it's like, what are you being in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
So, the practice of caring, it's where I see it as a person connects on a human level, that you're participating in that relationship too, not just providing service to
Yeah.
someone. So,
Exactly. And I think this holds dear to Patricia, because what she's saying, as a social worker for 30 years, to now not be able to see people in person to do social work assessment does not feel right.
Yeah.
That's because she has that heart for what she's doing. It's not just a job. She wants to, after 30 years, she really wants to be there. I'm sure reading the body language and
Yeah.
being able to hold their hand if they're going through, it is different. It
It
is different for
is.
us. Yeah.
Melanie said, with healthy self-care and boundaries for care. Yeah, that's the other thing. Sometimes we can care too much. That's the flip side of that, where we don't have the boundaries. I've been guilty of that at times, to be very honest and transparent, where I got burned out because you want to help so many people, and then people know that you can provide this resource and that, and you find yourself at a point where like you're giving, and you're not taking time to really do the self-care component. So that is also something that we want to mention. In caring for others, we must also be able to care for ourselves.
Me too, because that is difficult. And this is along with everything else that's going on right now, not just the pandemic, but everyday life, your cases, and depending on your workload. And we're just right now, self-care is a major thing for us to really take the time to do, and to ensure our families and friends and everybody around us, our coworkers and everything. Sometimes the level of not caring for ourselves can spill over into a lot of things. So that's something right now that we really want to concentrate on doing. Take the time to do it.
So I wanted to ask a question. You know, how would you describe being cared for? Like, what would that feel like to you? What is it for you if someone asks you, what do you need to be cared for? How would you describe that? For me, it's just, touch, the sense of touch. I love to be hugged, and I love to give hugs. So that caring for is an extension of that, of touch for me. I
Mhm.
just want to know what you might be thinking. How would you describe being cared for? What does that look like to you? What does caring look and feel like to you? Emotional presence. Maud says yes. Yeah, emotional presence.
Yeah, that's a good one.
To be listened
Janice
to.
says to be listened to.
Mhm. Truly hearing you.
Hmm.
Non-critical listening. These are
That's, yes,
awesome.
really good.
Feeling safe. Yes. Feel safe that I can truly rely on someone else, respect, accountability, and empathy.
All of those.
That's
And
wonderful.
Jacqueline, a note of text that you are being thought of. That's good. Yeah. And those are just the little things. Yeah.
Yeah, the little things
Mhm.
matter. I
Yeah,
mean,
it does.
they really
It does.
matter,
Mhm.
especially right now. It's so much, we're not being able to do that we normally would do.
Feeling there is no judgment. That's from Suzanne. Taking care of self in order to better help others. Absolutely. That's Janice.
Yes.
Maud, someone that I can be vulnerable with. Ooh, yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Because sometimes I don't know about you, but in the work that we do, people think that you're so strong that you're always able to handle everything. So, Maud, I totally relate to that, that sometimes you need to be able to really cry too, if I mean, just to let go and let someone else know what's really in your heart of hearts too.
Mhm.
And that is, and even feeling that there's no judgment, because here again, you can feel guilty, right? That sometimes, well, I don't, people are suffering, people need me. And, you can start feeling guilty, or you can feel judged by not saying no sometimes, when you have to have
Mhm.
those boundaries. I'm not going to be able to do that today. I'm not going to be able to, do that. So yeah, taking
Yeah.
care of ourselves, it does help us to better take care of others.
And sometimes I know I have close friends and I have some family members like that are very, very strong and think that they have to stay strong
Mhm.
and never, break down. Or I had a friend of mine, when I saw her break down over something once before, I couldn't believe it. And I really didn't know what to do with her because at the time, since you've never seen, as Ms. Maud was saying, the vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
it almost scared me because I had never seen that. But that is what she needed to do. She's human. She needed that. She could not continue to go on. So we need to be mindful of that. Just because that person is appearing to be strong all the time, they're not. They're like the next person. They can't always be the one that you go to and depend on. You just can't. And Melanie realized I'm dealing with this as a whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Speak to me on all levels.
Yeah. Yeah, we are holistic beings, you know. We have this body, we have our soul, our emotions and all our feelings and all of that. And then we have our spirit self too. So you're right. And we are holistic in who we are too. And even when we're dealing with other people in our caring acts of care toward others, you know, being mindful that they are holistic, that they come with their own stories, their own situations, things that might be different from us. So being able to nurture that. I know this is one of the things that I wanted to kind of mention too about the season that we're in terms of just helping and helping other people make it through, like supporting each other. I see this as a season, actually on a larger scale, for us to have a heart for humanity. I think
Hmm.
that with all that's happening with the climate change and all the issues that we're seeing in people's situations, whether we know them or not, I think that this is a season that is really giving us all an opportunity to have a heart for humanity. And also, with this being Black History Month, I think it's also a season for us to have a heart for social justice and equity in that humanity reach. So
Hmm. And we always like to talk about, when it comes to Black History Month, those that we know. And Gloria, you had noticed on our webpage, we were talking about, we highlighted a Dr. Bernice Hopper, and she was a major advocate in the life care and palliative care. And with a little bit of history about her, she was a real trailblazer in making sure that um, hospice was covered under Medicare. And so that's just a little tidbit about our highlighted person that's on our website. Feel free to go to our website and to read her story. She was also one of the first African American women to get her degree at Harvard University. So, and Gloria, you may not remember, and I'm not sure if any of you all had attended, but she also opened up our first African American conference that we did with one of the churches that we have a relationship in Montgomery County. So she's been all around the world, starting different hospice in Tanzania, Africa, and she's just did a lot of work, a lot of work.
that's
So
great.
kudos to her. Hmm.
Oh, somebody says I was there. It was wonderful.
Okay, cool. Was that Melanie Bailey? Great. Okay. So just a little bit of Black history to
Yeah.
throw in there this month. We'd be remiss if we didn't.
Who comes to your mind for it? Careful not to say full names. Oh, okay. Um, who comes to your mind as somebody that's African American that you would like to um, recognize for Black History Month? Anybody?
Cicely
Sister?
Tyson, yes. Yes, she just passed. She was great. Wonderful, wonderful person.
Yeah.
Actor, actress. She's written books.
Yes.
And then
Toni
Diana
Morrison.
Van Hamer, who I just recently read about. Janice said that. Toni Morrison, I love every book she has, Patricia. I love every book she's written. Anyone else?
So we just give, you know, I was just
Go
thinking
ahead.
about Dr. Kizzy Corbett. I was just thinking about her.
Who helped with the vaccine, that played an intricate role in the
Yes,
vaccine.
yes.
And Monica
Amanda.
says Amanda Gorman, Janice Perry, Dr. Pauli Murray, the Loving Quotes by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. Holly Murray. Wow.
Hey,
Well, awesome. That's great. Stacey Abrams. Oh,
Stacey
yeah.
Abrams, yes. We're gonna hear from her, I'm sure, for some time to come too. Anyone else before we move to what your comment that you was gonna talk about, Gloria? Okay.
All right. Well, are you ready to kind of look at objective 3 so we can talk about?
Sure, we can look at ways to encourage and maintain hope during the pandemic. And I'm so glad that everybody's participating in this way because we can utilize all the help we can get. So that's great.
Oh, okay. Janice said that she found a website on Black Christians in history who were impactful and impacting from way back
Way
in
back.
history. That would be interesting.
Get the
Well, if
website
you
and
know the website, that'll be cool to share,
Mhm.
especially for our children. I think our young people
Yes.
kind of see some of the, the historical travel
Mhm.
journey. That would
Yeah.
be great. Thank
Let's
you. Thank
try
you for
to
sending that, Jen.
Yep, we have to be able to tell our history because in some cases that the history books doesn't give everything. And I've been fortunate enough, my grandmother lived to be 99. My mother is 87 right now. So to hear the history from your parents and taking it from generation to generation, it's wonderful to have.
It
It's
is.
wonderful to have.
It is, Terry.
Okay, so we can move on to the third objective. We're going to look at ways to encourage and maintain hope during the pandemic.
And so, Terry, you were talking about, the vaccine.
Yeah,
The-
speaking of vaccine, I just got my second dosage today. And right now I'm doing fine. And I know that a lot of people have skepticism over it because some of the things, especially in the African American community, on different studies that were taken. But I think with reading up on everything and being knowledgeable and having your choice to do whatever it is that you would like to do, and being mindful and reading up, not necessarily take it upon what somebody else is saying, go find out for yourself. Um, I think that's important. Anybody in the audience want to tell me what they have gone through or what they've been thinking about with the pandemic? And remembering how you successfully got through something very difficult in the past. This is what Rachel is saying.
yeah. Yeah, and being grateful that we got through something
Mm-hmm.
difficult, even to be here. I mean, with all that's happened, we've lost almost 500,000 citizens in our country to COVID, which is very sobering.
Yeah,
But
it is.
and the grief that's associated with that is, I can't even describe that, or
Mhm.
nor would I try. But
Yeah.
as we look at ways to encourage other people and to care and to maintain hope, I think the vaccination process is part of that hope to uh, encourage people to at least by the fall, hopefully that schools will be back. I know our university is planning on us being back in the classrooms for the fall. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to coming back to Maryland and doing some face-to-face things there with your community around end of life and everything. So that's maintaining hope, is really to look forward to what is ahead. And so we're, yes, we're going through new rituals, of course, And yeah, Mom says
Yeah,
focusing on the positive and not being overwhelmed by the negative.
that's
That is so true.
absolutely
There's
true because we do have a lot of the negative going on, and that's why I was mentioning earlier that we really need to be mindful, read for ourselves, and some of the things that frustrates me with the negativity is that we're paying attention to what's going on. We've been living with the pandemic now for it'll be a full year next month, and just following the guidelines, the keeping the distance, wearing your mask, plenty of hand washing. Those are the things that we have to live with. But outside of the mask, if you think about the things that they're telling you to do, we should be doing those things anyway. Maybe not the distance piece, but as far as like the cleanliness and things like that, those are some of the things that we should already be practicing anyway. Melanie, she said, given from our material access to people in need.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of people in need during this pandemic. And a lot of our rituals have changed, just as we were talking about earlier, going to church, turning into Zoom meetings and
Mhm.
different things like that. I'm sure we'll all be glad to be able to institute our rituals in our communities again. My daughter got married this year, and we had planned this big to do on the water in Annapolis, and we were hoping that that the amount of people would increase, and it didn't. So we ended up with the wedding in the backyard. So not the
Mhm.
big bash wedding that she wanted. So that's a change. But we all had to adjust from restaurants and how we work and having different schedules as we work. So all of those things are going to come back around real soon here, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so.
Sheila said, being mindful of all the implications of the pandemic and how we can support others and seek support for ourselves.
Yeah.
And Deborah, she said, staying flexible, grateful for technology for sure, grateful for science, staying strong to best infection control, even when tired, checking our right and left to see how we are all doing.
Mhm.
And Karen, she said, being grateful for the little things, which really aren't so little.
That is so true. Yeah, there's so much that needs to be done. There's so many people hurting, dealing with, social isolation, job loss, deaths, relationship issues and challenges, parenting, you name it. But I like what I think Maud said, focusing on the positive and not being overwhelmed by the negative. And that is, what can we do to feel more positive? And I say, just think about the things that are good in your life. Like, what can you be grateful for? Like Karen says, being grateful for the little things, which really aren't so little. Even the ability, guys, that we have right now, that we're able to be on this webinar, that we
Mhm.
have technology working, that means that we have electricity somewhere, that those are the little things that are not really so little when we look around and see what people are struggling with.
And Melanie said, our imaginations have been set to the craziest things to stay connected. It looks good in many cases. And this is what's funny. I remember when we first started going, dealing with the pandemic. And as she said, as far as the imagination, and we were home, we weren't going into the office or anything. And I had set my sights on, okay, my living room was like the beach. Someplace else was in Jamaica. I named the different rooms that I was in, and then after a while, that went out the way. So we do have a good imagination with trying to deal with this situation as well. Let me see. And Maud said meditation is an excellent tool, and brushing up on that is a good thing. It's very helpful. Um, let's see. Gwendolyn, one small effort. I have been trying to follow up with certain video meetings with a handwritten note to give the personal touch. People have noted great appreciation. I bet. I
That's
bet.
a great idea too.
Uh-huh.
That's
Mm-hmm.
a great idea. You
And
just to see a handwritten anything when you get so many
Jesus,
bills and all this promotional stuff, but when you
yeah,
see a letter or something, a card with somebody that took time to write and it's from someone, it's like a real gift,
yes. And Melanie says, hope and stay connected to God, who hears our prayers and loves us beyond our wildest imaginations.
Mhm.
LOL.
Yeah, love it.
Patricia, she said that is a great idea through naming the rooms.
Yeah, that is a great
by
idea.
and by now, I should have been around the world a couple of times by now.
Oh, wow. Well, I wanted to share some caring practices from the heart that when I was thinking about this, and I want to just share with you guys, and I'll give it to Magna too, so she can send it out in the email if you'd like it. But I said some of the things in my life are caring practices from the heart is to make sure that I'm cultivating and nurturing the meaningful relationships with others in my life, in my community, and that we are all part of in our everyday lives, so that we're nurturing those friendships and those relationships by giving the personal note, the cards, or the phone calls, just to connect with people by building trust through open and honest dialogue. That means that we can break down if we need to cry, that we don't have to always be so strong. Or that's what I was saying, caring from the heart would be to be able to trust someone and be open and honest and have dialogue without judgment when you do that. Someone already said this, but listening with the heart, not just the head, so that's having empathy, not sympathy. Sympathy, people don't really want your sympathy. They want your empathy. You may not know what they're going through, but if you can just say, I can't imagine, but I'm feeling it with you. That's empathy. And then the other thing I wrote was valuing and validating others, the dignity of the person as a social worker. That's one of our core values is dignity and worth of the person, but valuing others and validating them. I know there's a senior, one woman in particular who she's pretty negative, when I call her, kind of sometimes get pretty hard, but I understand that she's lost several of her children.
Mm,
And I mean, I don't know what that feels like. And so, for her to be negative sometimes and feel, say things that are, kind of pointed, it's not my place to judge her. I don't know her story, but it is my place to validate and value her and listen to her. And so that was one. And then lastly, I said, be ready to serve as an instrument of peace and light. Because no matter how dark this world is and the things going around, people notice, even with your mask on, if you have a smile in your eyes or,
mhm.
the joy in you to give something that's coming from your heart, the heart of hearts, to the world outside. So anyway, those are my little tips that came up out of my heart when I was thinking about how can I have a heart to care for others.
Does anybody in the audience want to talk about what flows from your heart for someone?
While we're waiting on that,
Mm,
I wanted to also mention again, don't feel guilty if you feel overwhelmed because you've been trying to care from your heart, because burnout is serious and it is real. And so that is something I just want to remind you about. And then sometimes you just have to do what you can with what you got where you are.
that's
So
right.
yeah, do what you can where you got with what you got where you are. And so I love this quote by Mother Teresa. She said, if you can't feed 100, feed one. So do what you can.
Yeah,
Continue
do
to
it.
share and encourage those that are in your life, in your space. And we'll just all continue to maintain this hope that things are going to be
Absolutely.
better. Things are
And
going to
it's
be
yeah,
better.
and it's gonna be better. And love on one another. We can love people um from a distance, from afar, from up close. That is more easier than being bitter towards someone, being hateful. That's the last thing we need right now, in this pandemic time or during any time. Rachel is saying it's a little harder now. I have to stop and find that place inside me, and then the love begins to come to the surface again. That's true, Rachel, because there's so much going on. We have a lot going on. So um, at least you're willing to admit that it's harder now. And I think that's the first thing that we all have to admit with some things is it's hard. It takes more effort with so much going on, to be loving to one another. And Janice said, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said he had determined to love because hate is too much of a burden. That is the truth. That is the truth. Just like they say, keeping a frown on your face, you use so much muscles. It's much more easier to just smile.
Yes.
Much more easier to smile. And I see that we're coming to an end. So one of the things that I would like to say is that whether someone is a stranger, if you're taking care of someone, your loved ones, your friends, always be able to have love in your heart for someone. You never know what somebody's going through. This is a time right now that we just need that. We just need love all the way around. We've been through so much over the years. I mean, over this past year, even going into this year, politically, disease-wise with the pandemic, a lot of losses, a lot of rituals that we've lost, a lot of being together. So I have a song that I want Magna to put on for us. And this song was written by Dionne Warwick in 1966, and it holds true today. And I think that this is something that we need to do today as far as loving on one another. Melanie just said, thank you so much. This was wonderful. And I am so glad, Melanie, that you enjoyed it. And I do want everybody to stay on for the song because this is all what we need to do with Dionne Warwick, which was written in 1966, which is a
what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb. There are oceans and rivers enough to cross, enough to last till the end of time. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another meadow. There are cornfields and wheat fields enough to grow. There are sunbeams and moonbeams enough to shine. Oh, listen, Lord, if you want to know. What the
Okay, so we're done, and just a few things. Gloria, thank you so much. As always, you're my partner in crime.
Yeah.
Magna, thank you for all of that you've done behind the scenes to make this happen, and to our audience for the wonderful participation. And I think, like I was saying earlier, it is much different than what we did last year. The open, honest dialogue, I think, is great. That's what we need right now with so much going on. And if you all like, please take a few minutes to get Dr. Anderson's information. She can be reached via email at gloria@hearttones.com or either one of her websites. And the same thing with any type of information that you need from us, Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice. Our websites are listed as well. And we look forward to you all joining us again for other upcoming events that Gloria and I are planning, and some other webinars that we're going to be doing as well, educational wise, that will consist of CEUs and different things like that. So I hope this was helpful, and not only helpful, I just hope that this was an hour out of your day to relax, calm down, and engage with us. I'm glad that you all have joined us, and thank you so much. And thanks again for your participation.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm just going to finish up. Thank you, Terry and Dr. Anderson, for this presentation. And thank you to everyone for joining us, for participating throughout, answering our questions. We really enjoy having these community-oriented webinars. We hope this information was useful to you, and like Terry said, helped you calm down or get some relief in the middle of your day. You are welcome to email me or Dr. Anderson. I will be sending that information in a follow-up email, and I put my email in the chat. Just to kind of finish up with this, while this program does not offer